Because human beings are rational, they naturally plan for the future and order material goods towards their goals. This requires stable control over resources, which private property secures by enabling people to exercise stewardship according to personal reason rather than depending on the decisions of others. So private property respects human dignity by recognizing that human person as a rational and self-governing agent, but socialism weakens or goes against this aspect of our dignity. There is a greater risk of abuse and injury if it occurs on a larger scale like a centralized government than local powers, because socialism doesn't give authority that can be given to local powers. It takes over every labor issue, which can cause it to be crushed by an almost infinite amount of tasks and duties, hence not being able to provide properly. Because socialism places the production of things as the highest good, it makes personal liberty, such as freedom to form families and associations for personal goods, secondary or even sacrificed for efficient production. Because the socialist government will be the sole provider of education, it determines what is being taught to kids. Because it involves a penetration into this private sphere, homeschooling and private schools are seen as a threat and would be abolished, hence getting rid of choice of education and method of education. This means all kids are taught the same way despite different needs and things that work best for them. Because the state becomes the sole provider of education, healthcare, media, etc., it means that there are no alternatives, so you can never opt out if some state-provided care does something immoral. Socialism destroys family bonds. Under socialism, individuals owe the same loyalty and contribution to every man and woman in the state, so parents would owe no more to their children than to anyone else. Preferences for one's own family through acts like special sacrifice or gifts would be forbidden because it would cause people to become unequal. The socialist utopia is a false promise because humans are naturally selfish. For people to be charitable requires them to have a changed heart rather than being forced to give. People also naturally seek honor and status. Changing the material conditions won't fix this. Socialism therefore misunderstands human nature. It kills creativity, which isn't just artistic expression but the rational ability to discover new ways of achieving worthwhile goals. This requires stewardship and independence, which socialism denies or weakens. Socialism expects people to work even if they don't need to, and to perform more difficult work in exchange for the same compensation everyone else receives, like communal rations. It therefore kills incentive to work and makes hard work more insufferable. Socialist providers can create conditions on certain goods and services, ultimately controlling human behavior how they wish, and you can't opt out. Socialism sees religion as a rival for authority and solution to human suffering. Religion sees human suffering as a result of sin, which requires God, rather than material conditions which require the government. Therefore, freedom of religion and practically any belief in the ultimate is oppressed. Socialism denies that humans are unequal in talents, passions, and abilities. This inequality, however, is good as it creates a social web that unites us in charitable interdependency to help each other in our weaknesses. If we were all completely equal, then no community would form, as there is no need to depend on others, but we are naturally social. If the state provides everything and giving is forced, then there is a lack of incentive to give out of charity. This ultimately weakens moral virtue in upbringing, especially in children. Parents lose authority over their kids as the state becomes the primary provider of the household. Private ownership is a necessary ground for stewardship and freedom of choice, which is needed for parents to make decisions for their kids. But a socialist state takes this away. One consequence of this is indoctrination of children by the government. If socialism can take all of your excess wealth and redistribute it, then you would become a slave, since in exchange for their labor, slaves are only given enough to survive. It promotes ethical dualism by attributing evil to one particular group of people, in this case it's the rich, which can dehumanize and denies that we are all imperfect and need improvement. It's unrealistic and alienating. Socialist regimes have been attributed to the death of millions of people, which at least provides a good reason on face value to reject socialism in itself or err on the side of caution. It promotes ugliness. For example, socialist states prefer brutalist architecture as it was cheap, effective for mass housing production. Plus, if collectivism is the highest goal, then personal taste must be subordinated. Because socialism treats history as simply the progress of economics, truth is constantly becoming and changing. Tradition therefore has no value. This destroys the virtue of piety, which has the purpose of supporting our capacity for continuing intergenerational progress by acknowledging our connections to the endeavors of our forebears, and it checks the invention of new forms of evil. Socialists judge actions according to its role in historical emancipation rather than according to an objective moral law. So violence, murder, theft, etc. can become morally justified by the socialist regime if it is seen as helping the socialist goals. But this can mean that the government denies what is moral, which is not only authoritarian, but it also justifies evil and makes morality relative.